first up, and this might be expected because if I find myself in disagreement with the Calvinists on total depravity, likewise, I'm going to find myself in disagreement with the Arminians on total depravity because they both agree. So here are these same verses that I looked into last week and offered a counter interpretation of these passages. What's of particular interest for me on total depravity is the remarks about intensity. The intensity of depravity is so much that humans are unable to do anything objectively good at all. That's different from saying humans are able to do enough objective good to merit salvation. Again, I agree with the Calvinists and the Arminians that humans are unable to merit their own salvation. We are wholly dependent on the grace of God and upon the gift of salvation offered by the Father through the Son's atoning work on the cross. That is different from this idea that humans cannot perform any objective good. I'll call my objection the Cornelius objection. Cornelius in the book of Acts is a God-fearing man. An angel comes to him and says that his giving of alms and his prayers have been a sweet aroma to the Lord. This is called the Cornelius objection because it doesn't jive all that well with the idea of regenerative grace. Now, the Arminian might say, well, that's prevenient grace, but similarly, I might have issues or questions with what that looks like and whether prevenient grace is sort of an ad hoc explanation for observable phenomenon. Observable phenomenon in Scripture, not just observable phenomenon in the world that we perceive. For these relative goods that even Luke said, I think there are some objective goods that non-believers can do that are pleasing to God. Now, that's not enough to merit salvation, but that's where I find myself disagreeing with the intensity statements that I find from the Calvinist sources and the Arminian sources. So let's go on. So there's going to be objection there to total depravity. If there were some response given by some Arminians about total depravity, I could anticipate that because Arminianism has sort of taken on a bigger label that it sort of just means, in some cases, non-Calvinist these days. That's sort of a question about the label. What does the label mean? Is it only classical Arminianism, the followers of Arminius, or does it mean something else? I think that's a debate that the Arminians are having. It's a discussion that they're having. In the meantime, they've been happy to have a big tent, we'll say. Here's my reply and critique for Atonement for All. You can sort of see that it's blank. Because I fully agree with the Arminian point here on Atonement for All. There's nothing negative for me to respond to. Maybe I've missed something, but I think they've hit the nail on the head. Fully agree with Christ's sacrifice being available to all. So we're good there. No response. Woohoo! That makes me a 1-point Arminian right now, I think. We'll see how long we go here. Let's look at freed to believe. One of the things that I liked about the freed to believe, Arminians do have a robust sense of human freedom. And the way they explain that robust sense, the model of that anthropology, is because they believe in prevenient grace. So I will say that I do find myself in strong sympathy to and agreement with the Arminian appreciation of freedom of the will. Abbassiano says this, but Scripture very clearly indicates that people have choices and make choices about many things. Now he gives verses here, Deuteronomy 23:16, Deuteronomy 30:19, Joshua 24:15, 2 Samuel 24:12, 1 Kings 18:23-25, 1 Chronicles 21:10, Acts 15:22 and 25, Philemon 1:22. Moreover, Abbassiano continues, it explicitly speaks of human free will. Exodus 35:29, Exodus 36:3, Leviticus 7, verse 16, 22:18, verses 21 and 23 from there. He continues on. There's more verses in this facts of Arminianism. And he gives this big long list, and he says that it attests to human beings, that these scripture verses attest to human beings violating God's will. Why is this important? Because Abbassiano writes, showing that he does not predetermine their will or actions in sin. So that's why it's important. The biblical text, I agree, does show these things. It shows that humans do the things that God does not will. Now, for the Calvinist has an explanation for this. And the Calvinist says, well, that's because God has three wills. He's got the prescriptive will and the decretive will and the desirous will. Well, my objection to that is God not so powerful that he doesn't decree that which he desires? I mean, for the Calvinist, how powerful is your God if he desires things that he doesn't decree? Ultimately, he decrees what he desires, right? Even the Calvinists will say that the human does by will only what he's able to. So the same sort of thing with God, for the Calvinist, that is. So I don't find that response by the Calvinist against the Arminian critique here is successful. So I think the Arminians are correct on this.